triumph and successes of business owners across the land. We're locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. My name is James Kademan, entrepreneur, author, speaker, and helpful coach to small business owners across the country. And today we are excited because we have Barbara Zabawa. And I have to say, you have a laundry list of stuff going on here. So, Barbara, we have visionary, entrepreneur, author, which is broad sense. But then we have an attorney and the owner of the Center for Health and Wellness Law.
Yes.
Let's check that box. We have the founder of Pursesuitz. Pursesuitz. Oh my gosh, I messed that up. And the founder of Lemon Spark, which is a podcast and movement. We'll have to talk about that. You teach full-time at UW Milwaukee. And you're author of 2 books, The Tug.
Yes.
Finding Purpose and Joy Through Entrepreneurship, as well as, what has we got for the other one?
The Rules of Workplace Wellness.
Wow, look at that. So, welcome.
Thank you.
I don't even know where to start. You have so many things going on. Let's start with the Center for Health and Wellness Law.
Okay.
So, how long has that been going on?
Since 2014. So
Okay, so it's been a while.
7 years, right?
All right. And was that your first business on your own?
Yes,
Okay.
it was.
All right.
And it was a very scary time for me to take that leap, but I took it because
All right.
I guess the idea of me regretting not taking that step, that leap, was more scary to me than taking the leap.
Oh, I love that. The cost of regret. That's perfect. That's perfect. So what do you do? What is health and wellness law?
Well, it's a niche area of legal practice. Really, if you look it up on Google, you're probably going to get a lot of results with wellness programs for lawyers, which is not what it is. Wellness law is a practice area that I think combines health law and employee benefits and employment law all into one practice, where we work with wellness providers, wellness programs in the workplace, and there's a lot of that going on right now with like the COVID vaccine, and a lot of employers talking about wanting to weave in to their workplace wellness programs a COVID vaccine incentive or mandate. So I'm getting a lot of questions like that right now.
Sure.
But yeah, we advise and help coaches, health coaches, wellness coaches, naturopaths, chiropractors, acupuncture, physicians, nurses, health insurance companies, healthcare facilities, stay compliant or start their new business.
All right.
Review agreements, draft agreements. That's what we do.
So do you work mostly with employers, or do you do any work with employees as well?
No, mostly employers or businesses. Right.
Gotcha. Okay. I can tell you from the businesses that I've had and having employees, I assume that having employees was going to be easy, but there are a lot of laws that we have to tap dance around.
For sure, yes. And we have helped employers know and navigate those laws. But we focus on employers and organizations that are in the health and wellness space. So that's our specialty. We understand and appreciate the efforts that providers, professionals, organizations are trying to achieve with improving wellness and well-being of individuals, either in the workplace or as clients or patients of theirs.
Okay, interesting. How did you end up in that space?
Well, I've always had an affinity for wellness, especially occupational wellness. I had a fellowship ages ago, and I went to Europe, and I was able to interview medical directors of big companies about their employees' well-being, and I ended up going to public health school before law school and was really interested in industrial hygiene and occupational health and wellness. And then after I got my master's in public health, I went to law school, and I really focused on health law, which is much more traditional representation of hospitals and doctors and insurance companies around very specific regulations with billing and joint ventures for those kinds of traditional Western medicine providers.
All right.
That's what health law really is. But there wasn't much attention being paid to these providers on the periphery of the more traditional Western medicine platform. You know, people who are doing acupuncture, Oriental medicine, naturopathic medicine, and coaching, you know, that's really booming right now. And so there weren't really any legal resources being offered to those people. So after I became partner at my former law firm, I decided that that's where the tug kind of came in. I was feeling my own tug of restlessness. I became partner. I sort of reached the pinnacle of law firm life, and I was unhappy. I was not satisfied. I was restless. I've had what I called then, you know, some internal voices telling me, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing with your life. You should be doing something else. But I never knew what that something else was. So I left the private practice of law, went in-house to an insurance company, thinking that maybe that's what I needed to do.
Wow, okay.
But that I quickly learned that was not what I needed to do. Those internal voices were still there telling me you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then about 6 months into that new insurance company job, I met up with a former client of mine, and he was asking me to come back to private practice. But I couldn't imagine myself going back to a big law firm because I had just left.
Okay.
So it was at that lunch at Red Robin in June of 2014 when the thought popped into my head, really out of nowhere, because I had never, ever considered myself an entrepreneur, considered myself a risk taker. It was never on my bucket list to own my own law firm. But at that moment, the idea of having my own law firm popped into my head, and it wouldn't leave.
Oh.
And you can imagine, you know, I was not prepared for that idea financially or mentally.
All right.
I was not prepared, but it would not leave. And it was, I would seek the counsel of, you know, trusted mentors who wisely advised me, oh, you should really not do that right now. You're only 6 months into your insurance company job. Maybe give it another 6 months and then see if you still want to take that leap. And that was good, sage advice, but I decided I can't pass this window of opportunity. I don't know if in 6 months this client of mine would still be there. So I said to myself, I'm going to do it. And that's why it was really scary, because I had no financial cushion. I had no financial cushion to prepare me for being completely independent. But I took the leap, and it's been great. And
I hope so.
Those voices that I heard stopped after I took the leap.
All right.
Maybe it was because I was so busy and scared I couldn't hear them anymore.
I'm wondering, what coaches did you go to that said don't do this?
Oh, former law school professors that I had really maintained a really good working relationship with, and other people that, you know, I just trusted, friends, family.
Anybody that actually had their own business?
No.
Okay. Well, there you go.
No, but I did start meeting with people who had their own business, and they were always very open to being a resource. So that made me feel very comfortable.
I always tell my students, if you reach out to an entrepreneur and just say, hey, let me buy you a cup of coffee, I want to pick your brain, if they ever say no, they're probably about to go under. Because they're afraid to tell you something that's would be bad advice, essentially.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs always, I've never met an entrepreneur that wasn't interested in helping another entrepreneur.
Yeah, it is a very helpful community. And I have a lot of people to thank for being there when I was debating whether I should take the leap.
All right.
But
so no regrets?
No. Oh, no. But circling back, that's how I got to do wellness law, because now that was the first feeling I really felt after I took the leap. Other than fear, I felt liberated. Like, oh, now all of a sudden I'm not restricted by other people's notions of what constitutes a legitimate legal practice. I can create my own legal practice.
Yeah.
And I started attending events, wellness events, where people who deliver wellness services would go and talking with them, because I was just inherently interested, given my background when I was in Europe and after that.
Yeah.
So I would listen to the people at these conferences, and they would complain constantly about, oh, there's no legal help here. And I was always the only lawyer in the room, which was shocking to me, because when I was a health lawyer, I would go to conferences for healthcare providers, and there would be many lawyers. I was never
They
the
probably
only
smell money.
lawyer. Yes, I mean, we were all chasing after these huge fish, and what happens when you do that is that you lose sight of all the little fish that need help too. And now that I was sort of free to look around and do my own research, I discovered that there was nobody out there helping these wellness providers and organizations that was specializing in their specific legal needs. And so that's what I did.
All right. And so you hang your shingle, you start your law firm targeting wellness or catering to them. How do you get found?
I started offering myself to speak at their conferences, to write articles, and they were hungry for it because they didn't have any resources. So I would call national associations and state associations that catered to the wellness community, because they're out there, as they are with most industries. And I would say, hey, I'm a lawyer and I'm interested in this area. I would like to speak or write for your organization. And they said yes most of the time.
Oh, very cool.
And so I would get my name out there with articles and with speaking engagements. And people just got to know me, and I was invited back year after year, and it just grew that way.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So when you first started this, was there ever any fear or concern a few months into it that you weren't going to make it, or that this is too tough, or how did you get over that?
Always, because I'm not a risk taker.
Oh.
I'm a lawyer, and I tell people lawyers are like the most risk-averse people on the planet, because that's our job, is to reduce risk for our clients.
Sure.
And so the thought of, doing something that's really risky is, we think of the consequences. And so, yes, I was always very scared that from month to month, am I going to be able to pay my bills this month? Because remember, I didn't have any savings. It's not something I was planning for to do. I just did it. And so, yes, it was always frightening, but eventually you kind of see a rhythm and a pattern, and the ups and downs of, entrepreneurship when it comes to finances, and you just adjust, and that's what I did.
All right. So did it take a year? Was it 6 months? Was it 7 years before you felt comfortable in your own business?
Well, there's always that, if you talk to my husband, he would tell you that I'm always on edge about, am I going to make enough money?
Oh, really? Okay.
to pay the bills. But it changes. What qualifies as enough money changes over time.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So, yeah. But I would say it took probably a couple of years for me to see the pattern of, the fluctuation of incoming clients, and how invoicing and how the cash flow works.
Were there certain things that you had to learn more or less the hard way, shooting from the hip kind of thing, such as billing or marketing, or just stuff like that you didn't anticipate?
Well, yeah, billing clients, because when I was working in my other law firm, we had a whole department to do that. We were taught, I thought, really well about marketing, so that I felt pretty comfortable with traditional law firm marketing, although that's changing with social media and all the different platforms that are, that exist. But billing was hard. Luckily, my husband kind of volunteered to do some of that for me.
All right.
Learning QuickBooks and finding a good accountant. That was key.
Okay. So when you're married, so when you decided that you're going to go off on your own, you're married then as well.
Yes.
So you said, hey, husband, I'm going to quit my job that I've had for 6 months. I'm going to go off on my own. What was his reaction?
He's always very supportive. He believes in me
cool.
110%. And yeah, he was behind me. He did not think for a second I would fail.
Well, that's super cool.
Yeah.
So you had more apprehension than he did?
He, for sure.
Okay.
As always.
It's like, yeah, sure, sounds great. And you're like, are you sure?
Exactly.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
So when did the podcast come about?
Well, the podcast, Lemon Spark, which
Yeah.
is the podcast, actually predates my law firm.
Does it really?
It does. It never really was a true entrepreneurial venture in
Sure.
the sense that I didn't have any financial risk with it. But the idea came about, I would say around 2005, 2006. And that was after I had a divorce. And it was a very traumatic time in my life, what I call lemons for Lemon Spark.
Gotcha.
And when I was going through that very difficult time in my life, I was searching for inspirational stories of hope that other people who had faced similar lemons to me, divorce and other, traumatic events, that they had now gotten to the other side of that lemon and can look back and say, you know what, as hard as it was, now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm grateful. And I wouldn't be doing this really cool thing in my life if that hadn't happened to me. I was looking for those kinds of stories.
All right.
And back then, there really wasn't anything for any catalog of those stories. You could find them occasionally, sporadically, but they weren't all in one place.
Yeah.
And I thought, I really like to have a nice platform for those kinds of stories, to share those kinds of stories. So I created a website called Lemon Spark.
All right.
Sometimes it takes a lemon to spark a dream. And I started collecting those stories. I interviewed people.
Okay.
Back then, it was before podcasting. I would ask around, do you know anybody with this kind of story? And people would point me to people they knew, and I would call them up or email them and say, hey, I'd like to get your story, and then I would interview them, write it up, and then put it on the website. And it was a lot of work. It was great. I met some really wonderful people, but I was raising twins. I was, a lawyer trying to make partner. There was a lot in my life that was going on. So I, after a couple of years, put it on the back burner and just let it sit. Always knowing it was a good idea.
Right.
And that someday I would resurrect it, but just wasn't right. And then in last year, September of last year, I decided, it would be really good to have Lemon Spark as a podcast. Now that this podcasting is really accessible.
Right. Yeah.
I can, and it might save time for me just to interview people and record it, as opposed to interview people, write their story, get their feedback, and then post it on the website. So I started the podcast last September. It's the same concept, but now it's as a podcast instead of a written story.
All right. And have you had challenges finding people with stories, or?
Not really. I have challenges, I think, finding time to do the interviews.
All right.
And then I do edit the podcast, so try to make it within 20 or 30 minutes and, take out a lot of the noise. So that takes time.
All right. Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
But I've got some really inspirational and incredible stories up on the podcast.
All right.
So,
And what's the website for that?
Lemonspark.com.
Okay, easy enough. That's super
Yeah.
cool. And then the one that I always have a hard time pronouncing, Pursesuitz.
Pursuits, yes.
Pursuits. Okay, tell me about that.
Well, it's a play on words.
All right, clearly.
Yes. And it's spelled deliberately P-U-R-S-E, the word purse, and then suits with a Z at the end. Because when I thought of the idea over a decade ago, what I wanted was a replacement for my purse.
Okay.
I hate carrying a handbag.
All right.
And the reason why women carry handbags is because our clothes lack functional pockets most of the time.
Totally true. Totally true.
And I tell the story of how really what sparked for me the idea when I was practicing at my former law firm. One of the cases I worked on went up to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court.
Wow.
And it was my first time going to the building, the U.S. Supreme Court building, the day that the oral arguments were happening for this case. I wasn't doing the oral arguments. I was just there as part of the team of lawyers. And the team met in this law office several miles away from the courthouse to gather and talk about the proceedings. And then before we left, we were told we couldn't bring our bags because they're not allowed through security at the courthouse. So we had to leave our bags back at the law office, which we all did. And when we got to the security check at the courthouse, they asked for my ID. I didn't have my ID because it was in my wallet, which was in my bag, which was back at the courthouse. I mean, at the law firm.
Sure, okay.
So now here I'm stuck. They wouldn't let me in. And I had to find a way back to the law office, grab my ID, and hurry back in time for the oral arguments, which I barely made.
Wow.
And all the while I was, observing how my male colleagues who just sailed right through security, they always have their ID on them because they carry it in their pockets, and they didn't, pockets are allowed, but not bags. And I thought, wow, this is really a disadvantage. It's a real disadvantage for women, professional women, and I felt like this is a problem that needs to be solved. And so I had it always in the back of my head of what I was going to try to solve it.
Okay.
And then I thought of the idea, I'm not quite sure when exactly, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago, of a tank top or some sort of undergarment that had pockets.
All right.
That would transition easily between outfits. So no matter what you wore, if you wore a professional suit or if you wore a casual outfit, this undergarment would have the pockets that could contain your essentials like your wallet, your phone, your keys, and it would conceal. Because it was an undergarment, you could easily conceal the contents, so you'd feel more safe. You wouldn't have to worry about getting mugged, and your stuff would always be on you. So unlike my situation with the Supreme Court, if I had worn my tank top back then, it would have been no problem.
No big thing. All right.
And so I started to think about how I could get that designed, because I'm not a fashion designer. I'm a lawyer.
Well, that makes two of us. Okay.
Yeah. I know nothing about sewing. I don't even sew. But my husband, he sews.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So he sewed the first prototype January of 2020 just to see if the idea in my head would work. And it did. And so then I looked around for a fashion designer, a professional fashion designer who could help me actually create more refined prototypes, and I did. And so now I have created this company called Pursesuitz. Your suit should be your purse. Yeah. You shouldn't have to rely on a purse.
Very cool.
And that way you can pursue your dreams, your activities without worry, so hands, shoulders, and worry-free. So that's the concept of Pursesuitz, and I'm actually wearing one.
Are you really?
I am. This pink top is my
very cool
tank top. Yeah.
All right.
You mind if I stand up?
No, by all means.
So so to prove that you can wear it as underneath a professional suit, which this is, but I've worn it, underneath T-shirts or other tank tops or sweatshirts, and then you can see I have my phone in here and my wallet and my keys all right here. And it can wear it working out. Here's my car keys and my wallet.
Holy cow.
So, you can wear it working out. So if you want to run or go to the gym and not have to worry about putting your phone on the floor or in the cubbies.
Right.
Or or carrying it in your hand, which I see so many women do, or putting it on your arm with an armband, which I used to do, which is really inaccessible, especially if somebody calls you. You're trying to, like, how do I answer this phone? It solves all those problems.
That is awesome. So are those available?
They are.
Okay, and where can people find them?
Pursesuitz.com.
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 That is cool. So when did they start going for sale?
Well, I had the first round, which is if you bought one today, you could still get a black, what I call a level 1 tank top. Those are still available right now. So if you ordered one today, I could ship it to you. But if you wanted the different colors or the level 2 and level 3 tank tops, those are being pre-ordered right now, and they should be available by Christmas.
Oh, very cool. That is awesome. So the interesting thing about entrepreneurship is that as an entrepreneur, you never run out of ideas. You are always, the challenge, right, is not acting on all of those ideas, because you'll either go stir crazy broke or you just run out of time and nothing gets done. Get started, just doesn't get done.
Yes.
So also with those ideas, it's kind of like the honeymoon period when you start a new business. It's fun. You get to exercise a different part of your brain, and there's a passion that gets involved. So that had to be fun, designing that, or working with someone to design it, coming up with the idea, putting up the website, all that jazz.
It's fun, but it was also frustrating because, I mean, I'm comparing it to doing my law firm, which I'm very familiar with that landscape.
All right.
You know, familiar with the topic and the business, since I'd worked in it so long and went to school for it. Fashion and doing a product-based business versus a service-based business.
Oh, yeah.
So different.
All right.
So different. So much language that I didn't understand. So many concepts that I didn't know existed that I felt really at a disadvantage, because I had to rely on my designer to interpret for me, essentially, so much on, you know, manufacturing and fabrics and notions and designs and pattern making and grading, and I'm like, wow, I know nothing about any of this. I just have the idea.
Right.
So that's been an adjustment, but at the same time, I've learned so much, and I feel really accomplished because I have learned in a year time. I have learned so much about the business. Still so much to learn, I know that, but I have come a long way.
That is cool.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you 100% that once you take that leap of entrepreneurship, the creative juices really do start to flow, like even more. And yeah, I feel like it's an endless trough of, you know, ideas that I have. And you're right that you have to be judicious in which ones you pursue and which ones you kind of table for maybe another time.
Sure. Was it tough to find a manufacturer for those?
Well, it was tough. Yeah, it was very hard at the beginning when I decided. My husband made the first prototype, and I decided, okay, I'm going to move forward. I need to find somebody who can help me, who knows the business. That was hard.
I bet.
That was hard to find someone
Yeah.
who can help me navigate the whole fashion world and, you know, merchandise and manufacturing, because I had no connections. You know, again, unlike my law career where I had lots of connections because I'd been practicing for 20 years.
All right. So if you had a question, you could find somebody that knew the answer.
Exactly. I knew nothing.
Now you're like, what kind of fabric should we use?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, my husband would go to Joann Fabric, but that's buying it at, you know, retail. And I know nothing about buying things at wholesale. And so that I had to do a lot of legwork to find a person to help me navigate this world. And I finally did, but it took me probably a month of solid, you know, making calls and emails and attending some webinars to try to get a feel for what's out there.
Sure.
And finally did find someone who then had those connections to manufacturers and fabric suppliers. And, you know, so Lauren is her name, she's been a real help for me and educating me
All right.
and navigating this first year and a half of Pursesuitz.
That is cool. So does she, I guess, I don't know how you pay someone like that. Is it hourly? Is it project? Do they get a chunk of the company?
Oh, well, she gets paid depending on how much I'm using her. Right now, it's a flat monthly rate.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. It's always interesting to hear stuff like that because you get ideas and I'm like, oh, we should do that. And then I think, okay, we find this person and you're putting together a business plan. How much is this going to cost me? And you don't, I don't know, until you go down that road and find out what are they going to charge you kind of thing.
Yes. And that's one of the things, that has been eye-opening for me because, like any consumer, when I've purchased clothes in the past, I've given absolutely no thought to what goes into producing those clothes.
Right.
Who makes them, how much it costs, what the margins are for making those types of items. It just never occurred to me to even consider all of those things until I started my own clothing company. And now I have a real insider's view of what it takes to actually produce just a tank top.
Yeah.
And so I'll hear comments from people because I'm always asking for feedback. What do you think of this tank top? Would you wear it? When would you wear it? And some of the feedback I get is on price. The price is really, for a lot of people, high. And I don't think it's high because I did the market research and I know that there are other tank tops out there that are in that price range. But for a lot of people who maybe shop at more big box type stores, it is much more, it's higher than what you would buy at a Target or.
They don't have pockets.
Yeah. Well, they don't have pockets, that's for sure.
These little apples
and
to oranges thing.
I do have a patent pending.
Oh, nice.
Utility patent and a design patent pending.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. That's the lawyer side of
All
it.
right.
But
cover the idea.
That's right. Intellectual property is extremely important when you have your own business. If you can get it, it's an advantage for sure.
All right.
But the price is really dependent on cost of material, cost of labor, and we always talk about in fashion or as consumers, we like the idea of made in America. We like the idea of sustainable fabrics, recycled fabrics. We like the idea of not purchasing from sweatshops. Those are all good ideas, but what people don't understand is that if you value those, then you have to understand it's going to cost more to produce the items that are in alignment with those values.
Right. Value has a cost, right?
It does. And so, you'd love to buy the tank top at $18. But what you don't realize is that the fabric costs almost $18. Just the fabric.
Does it really?
Because it's recycled, because it's antimicrobial, because it's moisture wicking.
Okay.
It has all of those properties which are really important for active women, women who care about the environment. But then, it's not, that's not including the cost of labor, that's not including the cost of shipping or the labels or any of the other things that go into creating the tank top. So, it's going to be a little bit on, the more expensive side, but worth every penny. I can tell you every woman who's purchased one absolutely loves it. In fact, I've had some women come to me and say, this is now a staple of my wardrobe.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm sad when it's in the wash because I want to wear it all the time.
All right.
And you can actually wear it all the time if you buy multiples.
Well, there you go. Solve that problem.
One for every day.
Yeah.
Because it is meant to be both an undergarment, like I'm wearing it. Well, kind of. I'm also showing it, so it's.
I understand what
that's
you're saying.
why I call it pocket wear.
Yeah.
Because it's a combination of underwear and athleisure wear or athletic wear. It's both, so I called it pocket wear.
Yeah.
And and I've trademarked that.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yes. And so I mean you can use it to do yoga or walk the dog or run errands on the weekends. And that's one of the things, I go to Costco a lot, and one of the things I notice now since I started Pursesuitz are all the women who are carrying their bags into Costco or wherever, Target, Walmart, I don't care where. And, they're dangling from their arms, which I know has happened to me, and it's annoying, or they're trying to find a place for it in the cart, or, they've crossed it around their body, so that's a little bit more comfortable. But I'm here to tell you, as a lawyer who cares about equality for women, there are alternatives, and you don't have to suffer that anymore if you don't want to.
That's fair. I even see guys, when they're wearing jogging pants or whatever T-shirts, I think, where do you put your wallet? Or where do you put your phone? So
I just assume they put them in their pockets in their shorts.
But the fabric is so loose that if they actually moved,
yes,
that thing's swinging all over the place.
Yeah, that is true. And that's why I made this fabric compression fabric. So it's tight against... It smooths your skin. It's more like shapewear, sort of like Spanx, but it has the pockets, so your things don't bounce around. It's really always secure.
That's very cool. That's impressive. So were you surprised when you figured out the cost of, like, what it took to actually complete an end product?
Yes.
Okay. You're just like, wait, what?
Yes, because I do value the sustainability, not using sweatshops, and having a really high quality fabric that's comfortable to wear all day, because this is meant to be worn all day long. And I could opt for a much cheaper fabric. I could find something that's $2 a yard or whatever.
Right.
But I've worn fabric that's like $2. It's not comfortable.
Right.
And it doesn't function in the same way. And it doesn't have the values that I want to bring to the table. I mean, I'm all about doing what's right and making lives better. And that, as a lawyer, that's sort of bleeding in from my lawyer hat. I want to make lives better.
Right.
And the people that work with me to the people who buy my product, I want to make your life better, and so my product has to reflect that in every way.
I understand that. Yeah, I have a side hustle, we'll call it, with a replacement window company, and that's product versus service, which is I ran into the same thing that you have, and I had this perception of what a price point should be, but as you go through the cost of windows, the cost of labor, the cost of disposal, it just adds up and adds up and adds up, and you end up at a price point that you're like, ugh, that seems higher than I want. But on the flip side, you think, well, you can either have it cheap and bad, or you can have value. Like, okay, I guess we got to just be at this price point where we can achieve everything that I want to achieve as far as the end product.
Yes.
And I wasn't willing to compromise on that, which it sounds like you weren't either.
Exactly. And you just have to find the right clientele that will be on board with those values. And that's not going to be everybody. And that's one of the things you have to learn as an entrepreneur, is find your target market, find the people who will be open to your ideas and what you have to offer.
Yeah.
They're out there.
Totally. Yeah.
And those are the ones you need to focus on. Because I was ready to throw in the towel.
Really?
Oh, sure. When I first started, I started in January of 2020, and by July of last year, I had the prototypes. And my initial prototype was not just a tank top. It was a two-piece thing. And my target market was professional women, like me. I wanted, because I'm a professional woman, I thought they could relate to what I was talking about. So I hired a consultant to help me do some focus groups. Okay. And I did 3 focus groups, one in the Madison area, one in the Bay area, and one in the DC area, of about 8 women in each group. And they looked at my product and they gave their feedback. I was not part of these focus groups because I'm too biased. So the consultant organized and facilitated all the focus groups. But she gave me the feedback. And the feedback was, none of the women, except one woman out in San Francisco, none of them wanted to give up their purse. Oh. And that was the message they were hearing, is that, I don't want to give up my purse. I love my purse.
Really?
Yeah, and that was surprising to me. I wasn't expecting
No.
Because I hate purses so much. I thought, oh, they're all going to be like so excited to know that there's this product out there, and that's not what they said. And after I got that feedback, and there were some good things too, of course, but we as humans, we like to focus on the negative. And that's what I was doing.
Well, in the end, the negative is what you got to fix. So.
Yeah, and so and while this is happening, my law firm is still going on, and I have teaching, and I'm thinking to myself, my law firm is just booming. I should just focus on that and give up on Pursesuitz. And I was ready to throw in the towel after getting that negative feedback. But then a friend of mine who is also a lawyer, but she does business coaching.
Oh, very cool.
She reached out to me and said, just on a whim, she just felt the need to reach out to me and said, hey, what are you doing? And so I told her about all my ventures, and she offered to give me a couple hours of her time just to talk. And during those sessions, she pointed out to me, she said, if you change the life of just one person, of what you're doing, isn't that worth it? And I thought, you're right. And she also said, you are the one who decides what success means, not anybody else. And I said, she's right about that too. And so that's all in my book, The Tug. And it was at that point that I decided, I'm just going to look at the feedback. I'm going to take what they said and revamp. And that's when I decided just focus on the tank top.
All right.
And just find that group of women who will, like that one woman in San Francisco, she was on board.
Yeah.
And those are the people I need to focus on.
Right.
I don't need to focus on everybody.
No.
Just the people who get it.
Yes.
And then eventually maybe others will come and join. But just the ones who get it at the outset. And so that was an important lesson for me. Really important lesson.
That's cool. So you, I guess, dealing with the tank tops versus just the suits, you make the design, dare I say, easier, because it can be more internal versus external.
Exactly.
So
less expensive.
Colors can be simpler.
Yes.
And you don't have to have whatever flair or textures or sleeves or whatever.
It gives the woman more options because she decides what to wear, how to wear it. If she wants to wear it on its own, which it can be, or if she wants to wear it as an undergarment under a sweatshirt or a blouse, it's up to her.
Nice. That's very cool. You had a perfect segue to your books, so how about you tell us, let's start with The Tug.
Sure, yeah, The Tug, Finding Purpose and Joy Through Entrepreneurship. I want to credit my daughter for designing the cover.
Oh, nice.
So when I started Pursesuitz in January 2020, I started realizing this is my second business, really, and wouldn't it be neat, because I help in my law firm, I help a lot of startups, coaches especially. People who are doing health and wellness coaching. They connect with me to find out what they need to do to get started from a legal perspective. And so I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a book, a resource that chronicles this first year of entrepreneurship? Rather than, I love entrepreneurship books and self-help books, the business section of Barnes and Noble. I love going there. But what I don't remember seeing are books that really focus on those early stages of entrepreneurship. What I see are books of people who've made it, and then they reflect back. But you lose a lot of the detail, 7 years out from when you made it, from when you first started. And so I wanted to capture the detail, the agonizing detail of what it's like to have an idea, to feel a tug at a crossroads in your life, thinking I'm restless. Like when I started my law firm, I'd feel like I want to do something, but I don't know how, and I don't know what. And so this book is really meant for people who are in that similar boat. They're feeling like their life is at a crossroads. They want to do something different. They maybe have an idea, or maybe they don't, but they just know they want to do something different, but they don't know where to start.
All right.
So this book uses my experiences with my law firm, so a service-based business, and Pursesuitz, a product-based business, and the podcast Lemon Spark as examples on what I did.
Yeah.
Not saying it's the right or wrong, but also weaving in my legal experience with helping others, what things you should be thinking about when you want to take that leap.
All right. So that must be written fairly recently then.
Yeah, it came out in April of this year.
Oh, way recent. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And where can people find that book?
They can find it on Amazon,
Okay.
also Henschel House Publishing,
Okay.
and if they go to barbarazabawa.com, there's a link there to buy the book.
Very cool. Very cool. What has been some of the feedback that you've gotten on that book?
Oh, people have really appreciated the insight. I have, a number of people who wrote testimonials. And
nice.
Yeah, it's been great. And I wrote it for specific people in mind, people who, I just turned 50 this year.
Okay, congrats.
Yeah, let everybody know how old I am. And I have a lot of friends who are in the same boat. And I think, when you get to that age, you feel like, okay, half my life is maybe gone and I have another half to live. What can I do with this other half? Is there more to what I've done? And there might even be a feeling of maybe a little bit of an urgency too, like, I'm running out of runway here.
All right.
What do I do? How do I make it go? How do I feel happy and satisfied this next chapter of my life? So that's really what this book is for, and I've gotten some really good feedback from people who are kind of in that boat.
Oh, that's cool.
It's reassuring.
All right, that's fair. And tell us about the other book that you have there.
Yeah, so this is the second edition of Rule the Rules of Workplace Wellness Programs. Not nearly as fun to write or read, but an incredible resource if you are in the wellness space.
Okay.
At all, in any capacity. Even if you're not in workplace wellness, even if you're a health or wellness coach, and you have your own clients and you hung up your own shingle, this book has some really good legal insight into delivering wellness services and some of the legal issues that arise with it.
Hence the rules of workplace wellness
Yes,
programs.
rule the rules. It's another play on words of the word rule.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. That is cool. And then I imagine that book can be found in the same places?
That book, the second edition just came out in June, so I'm not sure if it's available on Amazon yet. The publisher is the American Bar Association. So for sure, if you go to the ABA.org, you would be able to buy it there. Otherwise, it may be on Amazon. The first version is for sure on Amazon, but I recommend the second because it's updated.
Gotcha.
And the second edition will probably be on Amazon maybe early next year.
All right. Very cool. So out of all the stuff that you've done so far, let's see, in this first half of your life, what have been some of the basic things that you've learned, just as in regards to entrepreneurship and sticking yourself out there and that kind of stuff, that you surprised you, or just things that you didn't know were even a thing?
I think for me, following that entrepreneurial tug has really, as I mentioned, released the creative juices.
Sure. All right.
And shown me that I have a lot to offer, a lot more than I ever imagined. And so I would never dissuade anyone from pursuing that path because it does surprise you. It does surprise you on what you're able to accomplish and what you're able to achieve. And the great thing is you don't have to live by anyone else's standards but your own.
Oh, true story. Super true story there.
And that is liberating. And it also creates, I think, greater well-being. And studies show that. I mean, workplace studies, when they look at stress in the workplace, one of the biggest factors that contribute to stress is the lack of control.
Oh.
And so in order to increase well-being and thereby decrease stress in the workplace, an employer should really be looking at the amount of control that employees have and trying to expand that as much as they can. And so when you become an entrepreneur, there are no restrictions other than what you make. And but that's you're in control. And so by those standards, yes, it can be stressful, but again, because you have the control and the power to decide when, where, and how, and why, that makes all the difference to your well-being.
Interesting. That's so true. Yeah, it's interesting when I teach my business planning class and you ask people why are they starting their business, a lot of times the word freedom gets mentioned. And I don't think, at least in my experience, the students that I've had in those classes, the word freedom at that point means something different than the word freedom to people that already have their business. Because freedom, like what you were talking about, where you have the control, is different than them believing I can just work whatever hours
yes,
I want.
right. I can work in the coffee shop. I can,
they have
sleep
this
till noon,
ideal, I guess, where you, with the definitive experience, like, look, this is what freedom is when you actually have your own business versus what you may be attempting to pursue.
Yes.
And that way it's interesting. I always tell them you are very good at building your own prison. Very good at building your own prison. So you just have to be aware that whatever business that you're designing fits whatever it is that you want for your life.
Yes.
So, and I get the impression that you've done that pretty well with yours.
Yes. Well, I mean, I still have some runway left. So
That's true.
I still have ideas, but I have enough right now to take me places and see how it goes.
Nice. So let's go through some websites here so that people can find you. All right. So first, for the Center for Health and Wellness Law, where can people find you?
Wellnesslaw.com.
Really?
Yeah.
That is the coolest domain ever. Wow, you got lucky with that one.
Well, yes. People want it, but they can't have it.
Man, that speaks volumes about how rare it is. If you were able to get that domain, congrats on that. Wow.
Yes.
That's like getting chocolatechipcookies.com, or maybe the opposite of getting chocolatechipcookies.com. Regardless. And then Pursesuitz.
Pursesuitz.com, P-U-R-S-E, don't forget the E,
Yeah.
S-U-I-T-Z.
Z. Perfect. And then Lemon Spark, can they find that?
Yes, lemonspark.com.
Awesome. And then the books, let's mention that website again, your website that has
BarbaraZabawa.com. So BarbaraZabawa.com. And that will have links to everything. I had to create like a hub.
Oh, sure.
So that I had, I could tell people, just go to BarbaraZabawa.com and that'll take you to Lemon Spark, to Wellness Law, to Pursuits, to my books,
All right.
It's
Easier domain to get.
shop. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, James. It was nice being here.
It was nice talking. You got a lot going on. It's impressive.
Thanks.
I like it. This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. We are underwritten locally by the Bank of Sun Prairie. If you're listening to this on the web, could you do me a huge favor? Give a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, and of course, share it with your entrepreneurial friends. My name is James Kademan, and Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call, offering call answering and receptionist services for service businesses across the country on the web at callsoncall.com, as well as Draw In Customers Business Coaching, offering business coaching services for entrepreneurs looking for growth on the web at drawincustomers.com. And of course, the Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur and all of us, available wherever fine books are sold. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful viewers and listeners, for joining Barbara Zabawa, the visionary, entrepreneur, author, owner of Center for Health and Wellness Law, founder of Pursuitz, founder of Lemon Spark, the podcast, author of Tug, and author of Rule the Rules of Workplace Wellness Programs. Man, I get tired just listening to what you got going on.
And you forgot the teaching at UW Milwaukee.
And teaching at UW Milwaukee. That's not entrepreneurship. But that's a full-time gig. I'm certain you sleep sometime.
I do.
All right, well, probably sleep very well, so it's all good.
I do.
Oh, we'd like to thank you for listening. If you could do me a huge favor, I gotta look at my notes here. Do I have few? Yeah, I don't have any notes for you. Just be awesome. Enjoy your business. We will see you next week, and that's all I got. Thank you.